If you are over the age of 60 and you are still obsessing over the bottom number on your blood pressure monitor, you might be focusing on the wrong thing while a silent danger grows unchecked. I am about to show you why the top number, the systolic pressure, becomes the single most critical predictor of stroke and heart health as you age, and why having a perfect bottom number can actually be a warning sign that your arteries are stiffening. I have treated hundreds of patients who walk into my office smiling because their bottom number is 70 or even 60, thinking they are the picture of health, only to discover that the high pressure wave hitting their brain and kidneys with every heartbeat is far too strong. This happens because the rules of blood pressure change completely after your 60th birthday, and what was true for you in your 40s is no longer true today. I'm Dr. Ben Harris, and today I am going to walk you through the specific science-backed steps to target that top number, calm your arteries, and protect your future. I will show you the strongest method involving your morning routine after we correct how you measure, because if you get the measurement wrong, nothing else matters. 1. We need to address the stiff artery myth and understand a condition that affects millions of seniors who believe they are healthy. To explain this, I want to tell you about a patient named Arthur. Arthur was 72 years old when he first came to see me, and he was a man who took great pride in his health numbers. He sat down in the chair, pulled out a small notebook from his shirt pocket, and showed me his home readings with a confident smile. His numbers looked something like 150 over 70. He pointed to the 70 and told me that his previous doctor had said this was excellent, and that the top number, the 150, was just a normal part of getting older. Arthur believed that as long as the bottom number was low, his heart was resting easily between beats, and therefore he was safe. The problem was that Arthur had started noticing that his energy was dipping severely by midday, and he was having trouble focusing on his crossword puzzles, which used to be the highlight of his morning. This is a classic case of what we call isolated systolic hypertension. This is the most common form of high blood pressure in older adults, and it is also the most misunderstood. When you were younger, your arteries were like fresh, elastic rubber hoses. When your heart pumped blood out, the arteries would stretch to accommodate the flow, which kept the top number down, and then they would gently squeeze back, which kept the bottom number up. As we age, the walls of our large arteries, specifically the aorta, naturally become stiffer. They become less like rubber and more like a rigid pipe. When the heart pumps blood into a stiff vessel, the vessel does not stretch. This causes the pressure of that blood wave to shoot up dramatically, raising your top number. But because the vessel is stiff, it does not snap back effectively between heartbeats, which causes the bottom number to drop lower than it used to be. This creates a wide gap between the top and bottom numbers, which is exactly what Arthur had. His 150 over 70 meant there was a gap of 80 points, and that wide pulse pressure is a sign that the arteries are stiff and the heart is working much harder than it should to push blood against resistance. Arthur was making the mistake of thinking the low bottom number canceled out the high top number. We had to change his mindset immediately. We implemented a plan to improve his arterial flexibility rather than just trying to weaken the heart's pumping force. Within 3 months of focusing on the strategies I'm about to share with you, Arthur managed to bring that top number down to the 130 range without his bottom number dropping dangerously low. His focus returned, and he realized that what he thought was normal aging was actually a manageable condition. This is vital for you to understand right now. If your top number is consistently above 130, even if your bottom number is perfect, you need to take action to protect your delicate blood vessels in the brain and eyes. Ignoring the top number because the bottom one is normal is the single biggest mistake I see seniors make. It is not about panic, it is about precision. We need to target the stiffness, not just the volume of blood. This brings us to the second critical step, which is often the reason people are medicated unnecessarily. 2. We must master the quiet time protocol for accurate measurement. If you are treating a number that isn't real, you are likely taking medications that will make you feel tired, dizzy, and weak. This is exactly what happened to a patient of mine named Margaret. Margaret was 68, and she was a very anxious woman when it came to medical appointments. She came to me because she had been prescribed a second blood pressure medication by her general practitioner after a routine checkup showed her pressure was 160/85. The problem was that every time she took the medication, she felt like she was going to faint. She would stand up from her sofa and have to grab the armrest to steady herself because the room would spin. She told me she felt like a zombie, walking through her day in a haze. When I asked her about her home readings, she said she rarely took them because she trusted the doctor's office more. We did a little experiment right there in the office. I talked to her, asked her about her grandchildren, and kept the conversation going while the nurse took her blood pressure. It was 158/82. Then I asked everyone to leave the room except Margaret. I asked her to sit in the chair with her back supported, her feet flat on the floor, and her arm resting on the desk at heart level. I told her we were going to sit in absolute silence for 5 minutes. No talking, no scrolling on her phone, just breathing. After 5 minutes of silence, the machine took a reading automatically. The result was 135/78. That is a massive difference. Margaret did not have severely uncontrolled hypertension. She had white coat syndrome mixed with improper measurement technique. By treating the higher number, her previous doctor had lowered her actual physiological pressure too much, leading to the dizziness and fainting risk, which is incredibly dangerous for seniors because of the risk of falls. If you fall and break a hip, it sets off a cascade of health issues that are difficult to recover from. So, here is the rule you must follow at home. The top number is extremely sensitive to your nervous system. If you are talking or even listening to someone else talk, your brain is engaged and your sympathetic nervous system is slightly active. This keeps your blood vessels slightly constricted and raises that top number. To get a true reading, you must adopt the quiet time protocol. Sit in a chair with a hard back, not a soft sofa where you sink in. Keep your feet flat on the floor, uncrossed. Crossing your legs can raise the top number by as much as 8 to 10 points. Support your arm on a table so that the cuff is at the same level as your heart. If your arm is dangling at your side, the reading will be higher. If your arm is held up high, the reading will be lower. And most importantly, you must sit there for 5 full minutes before you press the start button. During this time, do not talk to your spouse. Do not watch the news, which is designed to agitate you. Just sit and let your body reach its true baseline. Take 3 readings, 1 minute apart, and average the last 2. This average is your real number. This is the number you should base your lifestyle changes on. Once Margaret started doing this at home, we were able to safely reduce her medication, and her dizziness vanished completely. She got her life back simply by measuring correctly. Before we move on to the dietary changes that specifically target arterial stiffness, I want to ask you a question to help us understand our community better. Comment your age and your usual top number range in the comments section below. It is helpful to see that you are not alone in dealing with these fluctuations. Seeing others with similar numbers can be very reassuring. Now that we know what we are truly dealing with, we can look at how to fuel the body to fix it. 3. We need to implement the potassium counterbalance. When people hear blood pressure diet, they immediately think of one thing: stopping salt. While reducing sodium is helpful for many people, it is only half of the equation. And for some seniors, focusing only on restriction makes life miserable without fixing the problem. Let me introduce you to James. James was 66 years old, and he was a man who loved food. However, after a scare with high blood pressure, his doctor told him to cut out salt. James took this advice to the extreme. He stopped eating out, he boiled his vegetables without seasoning, and he ate plain chicken that tasted like cardboard. He was miserable. He told me that he dreaded mealtimes because the joy of eating was gone, but the most frustration came from the fact that despite all this sacrifice, his top number was stubborn. It hovered around 145, refusing to budge. James was doing the restriction part correctly, but he was missing the addition part. Your kidneys control your blood pressure by balancing the amount of fluid in your blood. They do this by managing the ratio of sodium to potassium. Sodium holds onto water, which increases blood volume and pressure. Potassium does the opposite. It tells the kidneys to excrete more sodium and water, and crucially, it helps relax the tension in the blood vessel walls. As we age, our bodies become more sensitive to salt, but we also tend to eat fewer potassium-rich foods. James was eating low salt, but he was also eating low potassium because he was mostly eating plain pasta and boiled chicken. He wasn't giving his arteries the signal to relax. We changed his approach completely. Instead of just saying no to salt, we started saying yes to potassium. We added specific foods to his daily routine that are powerhouses for the top number. We added a half of an avocado to his lunch. Avocados are incredibly rich in potassium and healthy fats. We added a baked sweet potato to his dinner rotation. Sweet potatoes have more potassium than bananas and are a comforting, filling food for seniors. We included spinach and white beans into his soups and stews. These foods act as a natural counterbalance to the sodium in your diet. A recent analysis of multiple studies has shown that the ratio of sodium to potassium is often more important than the absolute amount of sodium alone. This means that if you increase your potassium intake, you can often get away with a little bit of salt for flavor, making your life much more enjoyable. Within a few weeks of adding these foods, James saw his top number drop by about 8 points. But more importantly, he started enjoying his meals again. He wasn't just taking things away, he was nourishing his body. He felt stronger, and the food tasted good. Of course, a safety note here is necessary. If you have advanced kidney disease or are taking certain medications that spare potassium, you must check with your doctor before making significant increases in potassium intake, as your kidneys might not be able to process the excess. But for the vast majority of seniors with normal kidney function, this potassium counterbalance is a game changer. It turns the diet from a punishment into a prescription for health. Remember, if you are looking for potassium sources, look for foods that come from the earth, not a box. Dark leafy greens, potatoes with the skin on, squash, and beans are your best friends here. Now, let's talk about a lever you can pull every single day, specifically after you eat, to help manage that top number. 4. We need to utilize the 11-minute post-meal stroll. This is a strategy that works with your body's natural rhythms to lower pressure when it tends to spike. Let me tell you about Eleanor. Eleanor was 74, and she suffered from osteoarthritis in her knees. Her cardiologist had told her she needed to do cardio to lower her blood pressure. When Eleanor heard cardio, she imagined running on a treadmill or taking a high-impact aerobics class. She knew her knees couldn't handle that, so she felt defeated. She essentially did nothing because she thought the only thing that worked was something she couldn't do. As a result, her blood pressure remained high, and she spent most of her afternoons sitting in her recliner watching television. What Eleanor didn't know is that you don't need intense cardio to lower blood pressure. You need consistent, gentle movement, and the timing of that movement matters more than the intensity. After you eat a meal, your body directs blood flow to your digestive system. However, for many seniors, the heart has to work harder to maintain pressure elsewhere, or sometimes the system struggles to regulate, leading to stiff spikes in pressure. We introduced Eleanor to the concept of the post-meal stroll. The rule was simple. Wait about 15 to 20 minutes after finishing lunch or dinner and then go for a gentle walk. This wasn't a power walk, it was a stroll, at a pace where she could easily carry on a conversation. We started with just 10 to 11 minutes. Why 11 minutes? Because it is mentally manageable. 10 feels too short, 20 feels like a workout, but 11 is a specific, small commitment. When you walk gently after eating, your muscles engage and ask for glucose and oxygen. This helps divert blood flow into the large muscle groups of the legs, reducing the resistance in the overall system. It acts as a pressure release valve. Furthermore, the rhythmic contraction of the leg muscles acts as a second heart, helping to pump blood back up to the heart smoothly, preventing it from pooling and keeping the circulation dynamic. Eleanor found that she could handle this easily. She walked around her block, or if the weather was bad, she simply walked loops inside her house. She wasn't breathless, and her knees didn't hurt because the movement was gentle and on flat ground. She noticed something remarkable after about 2 weeks. She usually felt sleepy and groggy after lunch, a time when her pressure was likely fluctuating. But with the walk, she returned feeling alert and refreshed. Her evening blood pressure readings, which used to be her highest of the day, started to come down significantly. She was using her own physiology to treat her condition. This is something every senior can do. You do not need a gym membership. You do not need expensive equipment. You just need to stand up after your meal settles and move your body gently. If you have mobility issues that prevent walking, simply marching in place while seated in a sturdy chair for the same amount of time can provide similar benefits. The goal is to engage the muscles of the lower body to assist the circulation. This supports steadier readings throughout the day and takes the burden off the heart. Also, if you are finding these tips helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel. We share simple, research-backed health tips for seniors every week, and your subscription helps us reach more people who need this information. Now, we have covered how to measure, what to eat, and how to move after meals. But there is another form of exercise that is even easier on the joints than walking, yet practically miraculous for lowering the top number. It is so effective that it is often compared to medication in its potency, yet very few doctors talk about it. It involves almost no movement at all, which sounds contradictory, but the science behind it is solid. I am going to explain exactly how to do this in the next section, along with a hidden sleep issue that might be spiking your pressure while you are unconscious. We are going to continue directly with the next powerful item on our list. 5. We must embrace the isometric hand grip. This is often called the lazy exercise, but that name does not do justice to its power. To explain why this works, I want to share the story of Thomas. Thomas was 70 years old and had a history of back pain that made traditional exercise very difficult. He felt helpless because every time he tried to exercise to help his blood pressure, his back would flare up and he would be bedridden for 2 days. He felt like his body was failing him. He had resigned himself to just taking more pills. When I told him about isometric exercises, he was skeptical. "You mean I just squeeze something and it lowers my blood pressure?" he asked. It sounded too good to be true. Isometric exercise is defined as contracting a muscle without changing its length. Think of pushing against a wall or squeezing a stress ball. Nothing moves, but the muscle is working hard. Here is why it is magic for the top number. When you squeeze your hand tightly, you temporarily compress the blood vessels in your forearm. This stops blood flow for a brief moment. When you release the squeeze, blood rushes back into the vessel. This sudden rush releases a flood of nitric oxide, a natural gas produced by your distinct blood vessel lining. Nitric oxide is the body's most powerful vasodilator. It signals the arteries to open up and relax. It essentially trains your blood vessels to dilate. I instructed Thomas to get a simple hand grip tool, the kind you can buy for a few dollars at a sporting goods store, or even to use a tightly rolled up hand towel. The protocol we used is specific. He would squeeze the object with his right hand for 2 minutes. He would squeeze at about 30% of his maximum effort, not crushing it, just a firm, sustained hold. Then he would rest for 1 minute. Then he would squeeze with his left hand for 2 minutes, rest for 1 minute. He repeated this cycle so that each hand squeezed twice. The whole routine took less than 15 minutes, and he did it while watching the evening news in his armchair. His back was safe. His knees were safe. But his blood vessels were getting a workout. After 6 weeks of doing this 3 times a week, Thomas saw his top systolic number drop by 11 points. That is comparable to the effect of 1 standard blood pressure medication. He was amazed. He felt empowered because he finally had a tool he could use despite his physical limitations. If you have uncontrolled high blood pressure, you should check with your doctor before starting this, just to be safe. But for most seniors, isometrics are a safe, low-impact way to target that stubborn top number. This supports steadier readings and gives you a sense of control over your own physiology. Comment below if you have ever tried isometric exercises before, or if this is the first time you are hearing about them. It is a tool that is severely underutilized in senior care. Now, while Thomas was fixing his pressure while awake, another patient of mine was fighting a battle while she was asleep. This brings us to a hidden cause that ruins the top number for millions of seniors without them knowing it. 6. We need to investigate the sleep apnea connection. This is about the hidden spikes that happen when you are unconscious. Linda was 67, and she was a mystery to her previous doctors. During the day, her blood pressure was reasonably managed, maybe slightly elevated, but nothing alarming. However, she woke up every single morning with a pounding headache and a dry mouth. She felt exhausted, even though she thought she had slept for 8 hours. Her morning blood pressure readings were always the highest of the day, sometimes reaching 160 systolic. This pattern, high in the morning, lower in the day, is a red flag for sleep apnea. Obstructive sleep apnea occurs when the muscles in your throat relax too much during sleep, blocking your airway. You stop breathing for a few seconds. When this happens, your oxygen levels drop. Your brain panics. It sends a surge of adrenaline to your heart, screaming, "Wake up, we need air!" Your heart pumps harder, and your blood pressure spikes dramatically to force oxygen to the brain. This can happen dozens of times per hour. Instead of your blood pressure dipping at night, which is what it should do to give your heart a rest, it stays high or surges repeatedly. This keeps your arteries stiff and overworked. Linda did not fit the stereotype of sleep apnea. She wasn't overweight, and she didn't think she snored loudly, but when her husband really paid attention, he noticed she would make quiet gasping sounds in her sleep. We ordered a home sleep study for her. It turned out she had moderate sleep apnea. Once we identified this, the solution was clear. She started using a CPAP machine to keep her airway open. I know many people hate the idea of a machine, but listen to the result. Within 1 week, just 7 days, Linda's morning headaches disappeared. Her morning blood pressure dropped from 160 to 135. Her heart finally got the rest it needed at night. If you wake up with headaches, if you feel unrefreshed despite sleeping hours, or if your partner says you gasp or snore, do not ignore it. Ask your doctor for a sleep study. Treating apnea is one of the most effective ways to lower the top number because it stops the nightly adrenaline surges. Even if you don't have apnea, sleeping position matters. Sleeping on your side is generally better for your breathing and circulation than sleeping flat on your back, which encourages the tongue to fall back and block the airway. This simple adjustment can sometimes make a difference in your oxygen quality at night. Ensuring you breathe well at night is critical for waking up with a safe blood pressure. Now, there is one more daily habit that is incredibly simple but often neglected by seniors, which directly affects the thickness of your blood. 7. We must apply the hydration timing trick. This is about volume control and blood viscosity. Let's talk about Robert. Robert was 80 years old, and like many men his age, he had prostate concerns. Because he didn't want to wake up 3 times a night to use the bathroom, he stopped drinking water after 4 p.m. He also didn't drink much in the morning because he wanted to enjoy his coffee. Robert was essentially living in a state of chronic mild dehydration. When you are dehydrated, your blood volume technically drops, which you might think lowers blood pressure. But the body is smart. When it senses dehydration, it constricts the blood vessels to maintain pressure to the vital organs. Furthermore, dehydrated blood is thicker and more viscous. Think of trying to pump water through a hose versus trying to pump syrup. The heart has to pump with much more force to push thick blood through constricted vessels. This raises the top number significantly. Robert's morning readings were always high and he felt sluggish. We made a small but strategic change to his routine. We didn't ask him to drink gallons of water right before bed. Instead, we implemented the morning glass rule. The very first thing Robert did when he woke up before his coffee was to drink a full 8-ounce glass of room temperature water. This immediately rehydrated his system after 8 hours of sleep. It thinned his blood, making it easier to pump. It signaled his kidneys to start functioning optimally. We also encouraged him to sip water steadily throughout the morning and early afternoon, tapering off only in the evening to protect his sleep. By staying hydrated earlier in the day, his blood vessels remained more relaxed. Robert noticed that his energy improved, and surprisingly, his blood pressure stabilized. His heart didn't have to work as hard to push the blood. It is such a simple lever. Water is the cheapest and most effective blood thinner you can find. Unless your doctor has you on a strict fluid restriction for heart failure, drinking a glass of water upon waking is a non-negotiable habit for controlling the top number. This supports steadier readings and better overall organ function. By now, you can see that fixing the top number isn't just about one pill or one diet change. It is about a series of small, smart adjustments that work with your aging physiology. 8. We need to address the mineral deficiency that keeps your muscles and your arteries in a state of permanent tension. I want to introduce you to Clara. Clara was 71 years old, and she came to me with a complaint that seemed unrelated to her blood pressure at first. She suffered from terrible leg cramps at night. She would be sleeping soundly, and then suddenly a knot of pain would seize her calf muscle, waking her up in agony. During the day, she felt anxious, a sort of low-level buzzing in her chest that she couldn't explain. Her blood pressure was consistently high, hovering around 155 for the top number. When we looked at her medication and supplement list, I noticed she was taking a high dose of calcium to protect her bones, which is very common for women her age, but she was taking almost no magnesium. Here is why this matters for your top number. Calcium is the mineral that tells muscles to contract. It is the on switch. Magnesium is the mineral that tells muscles to relax. It is the off switch. Your arteries are lined with smooth muscle. If you have a lot of calcium floating around but not enough magnesium to balance it, your arterial walls stay in a state of microcontraction. They cannot fully relax. They remain stiff and narrow, which forces the top number up. Clara was flooding her system with the contract signal but starving it of the relax signal. This was causing her leg cramps, her anxiety, and her high blood pressure. We made a shift in her nutrition immediately. We didn't stop the calcium, but we ensured she was getting it from food rather than just pills, and we aggressively introduced magnesium-rich foods. She started eating a handful of pumpkin seeds every afternoon as a snack. Pumpkin seeds are one of the most potent sources of magnesium in nature. She added cooked spinach to her eggs in the morning. We also discussed a magnesium supplement, specifically magnesium glycinate, which is gentle on the stomach and highly absorbable for seniors, unlike magnesium oxide, which is poorly absorbed. The change took about 4 weeks to fully manifest. First, the leg cramps stopped. Then, she reported sleeping deeper than she had in years. Finally, at her follow-up appointment, her top number had softened to 138. Her arteries were finally getting the signal to let go. This supports steadier readings and a calmer nervous system. If you are constantly tense, cramping, or have a stubborn top number, look at your magnesium intake. 9. We must correct the breathing pattern that keeps your body in danger mode. This is the most immediate lever you have, accessible at any second of the day. Let's talk about David. David was 65, a retired accountant who was very fixated on numbers. Every time he put the blood pressure cuff on his arm, he could feel his heart start to race. He would watch the numbers count down and the anxiety would build. It's going to be high. I know it's going to be high, he would think. And because he thought that, it was high. He was stuck in a sympathetic nervous system loop, the fight or flight response. When you are in this state, your body releases cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones tell the blood vessels to tighten up, because the body thinks it needs to fight a tiger or run away. David wasn't fighting a tiger, he was sitting at his kitchen table, but his body didn't know the difference. We had to teach David how to manually override this system using his breath. Most seniors breathe shallowly, using only the top part of their chest. This shallow breathing signals stress to the brain. We taught David the 4-7-8 breathing technique. This is not just taking a deep breath. It is a mathematical ratio that forces the vagus nerve to switch the body from fight or flight to rest and digest. Here is exactly how David did it, and how you should do it before every single blood pressure measurement. First, exhale completely through your mouth, making a whoosh sound. Close your mouth and inhale quietly through your nose to a mental count of 4. Hold your breath for a count of 7. Exhale completely through your mouth, making a whoosh sound to a count of 8. This long exhalation is the key. When you exhale longer than you inhale, you slow your heart rate down physically. David practiced this for 2 minutes before putting on the cuff. The first time he tried it effectively, his top number was 20 points lower than his usual panic-induced reading. He wasn't curing the disease in 2 minutes, but he was removing the artificial spike caused by his nervous system. Over time, practicing this twice a day actually lowered his baseline stress levels. He learned that he had a brake pedal for his stress, and he could press it whenever he wanted. This is safe for almost everyone, but if you feel lightheaded, just return to normal breathing. 10. We need to uncover the vessel glue hidden in your breakfast. This item is about sugar, but not in the way you usually hear about it for diabetes. This is about glycation and arterial stiffness. Martha was 73, and she proudly told me she didn't eat desserts. She didn't eat cake, she didn't eat candy. But every morning, she had 2 slices of toast with jam and a glass of orange juice. For lunch, she often had a healthy bran muffin. Martha wasn't diabetic, but her blood pressure was rigid. She had what we call stiff pipes. When you have spikes in blood sugar, even if you aren't diabetic, the excess sugar molecules in your blood can attach themselves to proteins and fats. This process is called glycation. Think of it like caramelizing sugar in a pan. It becomes sticky and hard. When this happens inside your body, it forms what we call advanced glycation end products. These sticky molecules gum up the collagen and elastin in your artery walls. Collagen is supposed to be flexible, like a rubber band. When it gets glycated, it becomes brittle, like a dry twig. Martha was essentially caramelizing her arteries every morning with that juice and jam. We had to shift her away from these rapidly absorbing carbohydrates that were spiking her glucose. We replaced the orange juice with a whole orange. The fiber in the whole fruit slows down the absorption of sugar. We swapped the toast and jam for oatmeal with walnuts and cinnamon. We cut out the bran muffin, which is often just a cake in disguise, and replaced it with a savory lunch of lentil soup or a chicken salad. By smoothing out her blood sugar curves, we stopped the daily damage to her vessel walls. It took about 3 months, but her arterial stiffness improved. Her top number began to respond better to her medications, and eventually, we were able to lower the dose. If you want to lower the top number, you must treat your arteries like silk, not like rock candy. Avoid the hidden sugars that make your vessels brittle. 11. We must examine the oral hygiene habit that destroys your natural blood pressure medication. This is a shock to many seniors who pride themselves on cleanliness. Henry was 69, and he was a fastidious man. He brushed, he flossed, and twice a day, he used a strong antiseptic mouthwash because he wanted to kill all the germs and have fresh breath. Henry had resistant hypertension. He was on 3 medications, and his top number was still 145. Recent research has uncovered a fascinating link between the bacteria in your mouth and your blood pressure. You have good bacteria on the back of your tongue that perform a critical job. They convert dietary nitrates from foods like spinach and beets into nitrite. When you swallow your saliva, that nitrite turns into nitric oxide in your stomach and blood. As we discussed with the hand grip exercise, nitric oxide is the molecule that dilates your blood vessels. Henry was using a mouthwash that killed 99.9% of bacteria. He was wiping out the good guys along with the bad guys. He was destroying his body's ability to produce its own vasodilator. When I told him to stop the antiseptic mouthwash, he looked at me like I was crazy. "But Dr. Ben, what about my breath?" he asked. I assured him that regular brushing and flossing were sufficient for hygiene. He stopped the mouthwash. Within 1 month, his blood pressure dropped by about 5 points. It wasn't a miracle cure, but it was a significant drop just by stopping a product that was working against him. If you are using a strong, alcohol-based antiseptic mouthwash daily, try taking a break from it. Switch to a saltwater rinse or a mild non-antiseptic mouthwash if you must use one. Let your oral microbiome work for you, not against you. This supports steadier readings by preserving your natural nitric oxide production. 12. We need to utilize the thermal release of a warm bath. As we age, our ability to regulate body temperature and blood flow changes. Let's look at the case of Walter. Walter was 78, and he lived in a colder climate. He noticed that every winter, his blood pressure would creep up significantly compared to the summer. This is a known phenomenon. Cold weather causes your blood vessels to constrict near the surface of the skin to preserve heat. This forces blood into the core, raising the pressure in the central arteries. Walter was also dealing with arthritis, which made exercise difficult in the winter months. We introduced him to passive heating therapy. The protocol was simple: a warm bath in the evening, about 1 hour before bed. The water should be warm and comfortable, not scalding hot. When you submerge your body in warm water, your blood vessels dilate to release heat. This mimics the effect of mild exercise. It improves endothelial function, the health of the inner lining of your blood vessels. For Walter, this nightly ritual served two purposes. First, it physically lowered his peripheral resistance, dropping his top number in the evening. Second, it relaxed his stiff joints and muscles, allowing him to sleep better. And we know that better sleep equals better blood pressure. Walter found that on the nights he took his bath, his morning reading the next day was consistently lower than on the nights he skipped it. Safety is paramount here. The water should not be so hot that you feel dizzy. You must be careful getting in and out of the tub to avoid falls. If you have heart failure, you must consult your doctor, as the heat can put a different kind of load on the heart. But for the average senior with high blood pressure, a warm soak is a luxurious and effective therapy. 13. We must address the sunshine vitamin connection that regulates your kidneys. This is about vitamin D and a system in your body called the renin-angiotensin system. Alice was 72 and spent most of her time indoors. She didn't like the sun because she worried about her skin, and she lived in a northern latitude where winter lasted 5 months. Her blood work showed her vitamin D levels were extremely low. Your kidneys produce an enzyme called renin. Renin sets off a chain reaction that tightens blood vessels and raises blood pressure. Vitamin D acts as a brake on this system. It tells the kidneys, "It's okay, you don't need to produce so much renin." Because Alice was deficient, her brake pedal was broken. Her kidneys were overproducing renin, causing her blood vessels to be chronically constricted. We started Alice on a vitamin D3 supplement paired with K2 to ensure the calcium went to her bones and not her arteries. We also encouraged her to sit on her porch for 15 minutes in the morning sun when the weather allowed. It took time. Vitamin D is a slow lever. It took about 4 months for her levels to normalize, but as they did, her blood pressure became easier to control. The spikes became less frequent. She felt a lift in her mood as well, which is another benefit of vitamin D. If you are struggling with a high top number, ask your doctor to check your vitamin D levels. It is a simple blood test. If you are low, correcting it is one of the easiest ways to support your cardiovascular system. 14. We need to harness the power of the red elixir found in the tea aisle. I want to share the story of Sarah. Sarah, 66, was trying to reduce her caffeine intake because coffee made her jittery. She missed the ritual of a warm cup in her hands. I suggested she switch to hibiscus tea. Hibiscus is not just a flavorful flower, it is a clinical powerhouse. Studies have shown that hibiscus tea acts somewhat like an ACE inhibitor, a common class of blood pressure medication. It contains anthocyanins, which prevent the blood vessels from constricting. Sarah started drinking 3 cups of hibiscus tea a day, 1 in the morning, 1 after lunch, and 1 in the evening. She enjoyed the tart, cranberry-like flavor. After 6 weeks, the results were undeniable. Her systolic pressure had dropped by 7 points. She hadn't changed her diet or exercise. She had just changed her beverage. This is one of the most effective herbal interventions we have. However, a word of caution. Because hibiscus is effective, it can interact with certain medications, specifically diuretics, water pills. If you are on medication, ask your pharmacist if hibiscus is safe for you. For Sarah, it was a simple, enjoyable addition to her day that yielded real medical results. It supports steadier readings and adds a burst of antioxidants to your diet. Conclusion: we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. From understanding that the top number is your true target after 60 to mastering the quiet time measurement so you aren't treating a ghost. We looked at the potassium counterbalance in your food, the 11-minute post-meal stroll, and the isometric hand grip that works while you sit. We explored the hidden dangers of sleep apnea, the importance of hydration timing, and the mineral balance of magnesium. We learned how to breathe to stop the panic, how to avoid the sugar that stiffens your arteries, and why your mouthwash might be hurting you. And finally, we looked at the power of warmth, sunlight, and hibiscus tea. I want you to understand one thing very clearly. You do not need to do all of these things at once. If you try to change everything tomorrow, you will be overwhelmed and you will quit. Pick one item from this list. Maybe it's the glass of water in the morning. Maybe it's the breathing before you measure. Start there. Master that one habit until it is as automatic as brushing your teeth. Then, come back to this video and pick the next one. Blood pressure management is not a sprint. It is a marathon. It is about the small decisions you make every single day that tell your arteries they are safe, they can relax, and they can carry your lifeblood smoothly. You have more control than you think. Your age is not a diagnosis of decline. It is just a new set of rules. And now, you have the rule book. If you found this guide helpful, please share it with a friend or family member who needs to hear this. There are millions of seniors worrying about the bottom number when they should be looking at the top. Help us spread the right information. I'm Dr. Ben Harris, reminding you that your health is in your hands. Thank you for watching, and here is to your health.